Welcome to the Enneagram Summit for the Helping Profession. I'm the host of the summit, Michelle Joy. I'm the founder of the Developmental Enneagram for Couples. And today we have with us Dale Rhodes, who's the director of Enneagram Portland. He's a mentor and guide with a private practice since 1998, focusing on the Enneagram, world wisdom traditions, common sense, and more. He's passionate about teaching clients and students about 9 points of view, especially using literature, film, and community explorations. He's a 3 time certified, well seasoned, full time professional in the broad Enneagram field. Dale offers online sessions for curious individuals and engaging courses for a vibrant, growing community. He works well with reflective and creative people who are motivated to learn, grow, and change together. And today, Dale's with us to talk about using literature, film, and community to explore character and type themes and how to bring more men into that mix. So, welcome, Dale. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate what you're doing, Michelle.
Yeah. So this is a really fascinating topic that I think when we watch films and such, we might notice, oh, it seems like that character could be this or that type of Enneagram pattern. Can you say a bit more how you got interested in that aspect of Enneagram work?
Yeah, absolutely. I have always loved literature, film, art. I have an interdisciplinary studies master's, so I really like interdisciplinary ways of teaching, and I like interdisciplinary ways of bringing communities together. So I know that when I first discovered the Enneagram many years ago, what came to mind not only were things about me and people that I knew, but major sort of archetypal characters from books and from film, from a lifelong of reading and a lifelong of seeing film. But I also had the experience of knowing what it's like to get together with other people and talk about, don't you know someone like this? That's the first part. And then the second part is, what part of this is me? So I think this is a long-winded answer, but maybe that'll be good for you for what you're exploring. I think the work that I do in the last 10 years in facilitating a community of people that go through a curriculum of different films and books each year, we move pretty well beyond the what type is this character. For example, we might be looking at just an old example of Hamlet. And you can talk about Hamlet and is this character being portrayed as a 4 or a 6? But right under that, in a play like Hamlet or a movie like Hamlet, depending upon who's playing him, there's universal themes. So we can talk about divided loyalties as a sixth theme, and we
Mhm.
can talk about fear, doubt, and anxiety, and we can talk about what it's like to lose authorities and parents. That's what's going on in Hamlet. But that isn't just going on for sixes. Sixes lay out for us all the stage of life where we realize we have divided loyalties. We have anxiety. We don't know what's coming. So my community classes drop down into learning about sixes from the sixes, because I do panels. I'm a narrative teacher as well. But we also get people to talk about, by talking about Hamlet, they end up talking about themselves and their own
Mm.
anxiety, how to live with anxiety, how to lose a parent, how to deal with uncertainty. Those aren't just six themes. Sixes talk about it more than the rest of us, but it's universal. So there's a long answer for that.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. And so part of what you're saying is when it comes to film, we're learning from other types too. We're not just focused on
Yes,
ours alone because there's so many
exactly.
great lessons from other types. Just as you were talking about type 6, for example, you talked about divided loyalties and what was coming to mind, some of the clients I work with and myself,
Yeah.
let's say one part of us wants to make a change in something like whatever it is, but that would be going against how we grew up.
Right.
We'd feel like we wouldn't be being loyal to this family member because now we're changing from
Right.
how they did life.
It's universal. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, exactly. And I have found that So I'm going to say something that sounds kind of jaded, but give me a minute on it. I think that after a while of studying theory, and I've been teaching the Enneagram officially since 2000, was certified first through the narrative tradition in 2002, and then later on through Tom Condon's ChangeWorks, Jerry Wagner's Spectrum program. I got a little bored with the theory. I got a little bored of reading the directions and the manual. And if I hadn't started teaching literature and film, I think I might have changed careers. Because I also find that there's a limit to what clients, and this is who's watching your program, I think, is providers. There's a limit to how many people want to read theory.
Mm,
It isn't that theory isn't helpful. It's helpful to me and you as as providers. But there, in particular, I find a lot of men, and that's who I'm focusing half of my practice on, that aren't interested in going home and reading a manual on psychological theory and defense mechanisms. But they will watch a movie called I Love You, Man, or they'll watch a movie called The Pursuit of Happiness about an African American man, a real character in our society, Chris Gardner, who's trying to be a good dad. So I have found that the way to teach the Enneagram is through story. It's the best way to
mhm.
teach it. And people don't have to read an article about defense mechanisms to learn about them. They can watch it in a film or read it in a book, and they can do it in community. And that's, I think, what's really changing for people.
I love that because let's say The Pursuit of Happiness, that movie as an example,
Mhm.
as we're watching it all, there's all this stuff that's stirring up in us that maybe we can relate to on some level. There,
Yes.
that's a great movie to talk about. So, can you give an
Yeah.
example of that movie,
Mhm.
how you might work with that? And also, do you have
Mhm.
a theory about Chris Gardner's Enneagram pattern that he's playing out?
Yes. So, in my discussions with my friends and teachers, Mario Sikora and Tom Condon, and also Judith Searle, who wrote a book called The Literary Enneagram,
Mm,
those are friends and teachers that have really supported the work that I'm doing. I'm not interested in writing a book. I'm really interested in facilitating community. That's what I love. It's the oral tradition of community. So, Chris Gardner's memoir, The Pursuit of Happiness, met a lot of my criteria. It portrays someone not in the dominant culture. It portrays a male, and it portrays someone that has a value, that he has an ideal of what fatherhood is and what success is. I don't know if Chris Gardner is a three. That isn't my theory. What
mhm,
I can say for fairly certain is that his memoir describes what threes care about a lot
mhm,
and
mhm,
seem to be what threes do a lot. This
mm,
is where my groups don't end up in the discussions of is this a three or not. It
mhm,
ends
mhm,
up being a discussion because I've proposed it this way that threes care a lot about success. They have a high value for being a model of success and overcoming obstacles, and they may lose themselves at times. And when they regain themselves, there's an authentic being who actually has become a model for overcoming, and they inspire others. So the discussion moves away from the theory and moves into we know these human beings and aren't they something? And look at how they fall and look at how they stand.
mm,
And isn't that us? How has that been for you? The
mm.
community ends up having discussions where we all maybe have failed, and who wants to be in a room to talk about that? But that's some of what three content does for
Yeah,
us. In the
yeah,
same way that four content gets us to talk about death and depth. And that isn't just a part of being a four, that's a part of being a human being.
yeah,
Fours care about it a little more than others, possibly. They certainly talk about it more. I'm one, I can say that. But giving people the permission to go into the content that's under the Enneagram.
yeah,
Because, Michelle, what I have found so much is that the Enneagram theory world, which is helpful to us as providers. Nothing against my colleagues that have focused on it. I theory is very helpful. It can also slice so thinly personality types and traits and neuroses that we lose the lived human experience that's the circle of the Enneagram. There are teachers that don't like hearing we have all of the types in us. I understand there's semantics that people disagree with, but we are all also having a universal experience. Nines are not the only people that forget themselves. Self-forgetting is on the circle of the Enneagram. It's not just in the pie piece of nine. It
Mhm.
helps us to talk and learn about nines. For example, Mr. Rogers, the biography of him, the biopic of him, Won't You Be My Neighbor? But also we'll look at Gloria Steinem, has been one of the people that we've looked at in my community as a social nine, somebody that knows how to bring communities together and to enact a will, um, but also do it without hostility, to do it with peace, to do it with kindness, to do it with decorum, to be an empath. All of those things, I believe, are accessible to us all.
Mm.
Even if we're not a nine, we can understand it, but it might actually be a part of our character that we haven't met yet.
Mhm.
That's what's happening in my community, and I love it, as you can tell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, just a quick question about semantics. Do you watch
Yeah.
the entire film and then you talk about it in sections, or do you take a section at a
Oh,
time?
yeah. Thank you for asking. Yeah, yeah, thank you. That was an assumption I had thought missed. So my students read a novel or they watch a film on their own.
Mhm.
And on my website, I will provide them notes and reflections that I have thought about, and they can read those before or after or never. Then they attend an online panel discussion where I'm interviewing people from the community that are part of the course. And they get to hear and ask questions of the person of that type.
Mm.
The panel is oftentimes, for example, if I did a panel of threes that were discussing the pursuit of happiness, the threes would be telling the community, when you watch the film, you might want to notice this and this and this, because that's me.
Mm.
And they may have some criticism if it's a fictional character, or some questions. And then people get into small groups that following week, groups of 8 to 10 with me. I facilitate all the groups, and they are it's a 2 hour group where people will give a reflection on whatever they have about the book or film. And we take a break and then we go into open dialogue. So it's kind of a book and film group, only I require the first hour to be no crosstalk, like a Quaker circle.
Mhm.
And people are able to reflect for 4 or 5 minutes aloud with the group, just what their experience was or what they'd like us to cover.
Mm.
And then it's a popcorn of open dialogue after, and it's really great fun.
I really love, and I'm seeing how much depth can come from this, and how interesting, what an interesting way to learn about other people, other people's types. When they say that's me, this is what I relate to. So
Yeah.
to put ourselves in their world for a bit, but
Yeah.
also to see what's coming up for us, and then what's our relationship to what's coming up for us, like let's say failure, for example.
So true. Yes. Yeah, Michelle, I'm going to make a confession. I'm in the process of teaching a class right now for 9 people just on 9, 6, and 3.
Mm.
And the movie that I chose for Type 9 is a film by Jim Jarmusch called Patterson. It's with Adam Driver. Some people may know him from the Star Wars movies or the Showgirls. And Adam Driver is playing a character who is a bus driver and a poet, and the film is incredibly slowly paced. When I watched this film, never having seen it, I knew who Jim Jarmusch was. Um, I kept waiting for something to happen, and nothing happened, in my humble opinion. And while I was watching this film, I was waiting for the argument with the wife. I was waiting for the dog to be kidnapped. I was waiting for him to have an accident, whatever, just as an American, like waiting for something to happen. And then the credits began rolling. And I realized I had missed the entire film. When I watched the film again, I realized that I was watching a character that could very easily be described as a nine. And that may have also taught me that that might be how I treat nines,
Mm,
that I'm waiting for something to happen.
mm,
And it is actually happening, but as a one-to-one four, I'm all revved up and I don't actually see what's happening. It was
mm.
very humbling to find this beautiful lyrical film was an example of something I missed about type nines. It was humbling. And I love being in groups where people are having those kinds of experiences, saying, why would Dale have us watch the Banshees of Inisherin or the Holdovers? Why would Dale be having us watch this crazy film? And within the week of them digesting it, they begin to see this is me, and this is also the people in my life, and I have something to learn. Yeah,
What a brilliant way to uncover blind spots and shadows.
it is in community. And it's a different modality than just doing one-on-one spiritual direction and mentoring, which I also offer. I'm not a social Michelle. That's sort of my least developed function, but I have come to really trust the power of people not learning their own type,
Mhm,
but learning the system of character and
mhm,
the system of values amongst other people. I mean, I've really been humbled in the power of small groups and good sized community where people are supported in growing and changing, and they learn about being a better version of themselves, not just from me, but from other people and characters on the screen or in a book.
mhm.
Yeah, I really believe in it. I love it. There hasn't been many things in my life that have stuck. I have a partner of 21 years, which is really great. But this part of the Enneagram, this understanding it as a system of character development. Forget the spiritual language that a lot of people don't really get, the virtues, the holy ideas. All of that is lovely theory. I'm a spiritual director. It's wonderful theory. But the everyday person wants to know, how can I love this son that I have that I don't understand? How can I get along better with my spouse? Who is this neighbor that bothers me so much? All of that, the everyday life. And I think this makes the Enneagram really accessible.
Yeah. Yeah, those 3 questions, you're so right, that's everyday life.
It's everyday life.
And I think I'm probably not alone when I say just from the little bit that we've discussed so far, I'll be viewing movies, films from a different lens going forward.
Uh-huh. Yes.
Self-awareness, more what's coming up, questioning, why is that coming up for me?
Yes. Why do I like this film? Why do I not?
Yep.
I don't know. I liken it sometimes to taking people to the art museum and somebody's kicking and screaming saying, I don't want to go into the modern art gallery. I don't want to know, but put them in front of a Picasso and then give them some context. I'm a four, and I'm interested in helping people grow and change through something beautiful, something intense, right? I know my type is at work in creating this. I do like being somebody that's doing something different. I'm not writing a book. I'm facilitating a community. Um, I wouldn't get what I really want out of my work life if I didn't do it live and with people. And
Mhm,
online, ironically, has broadened the audience of people who want to do this kind of work. And they're supplementing theory and they're getting theory from their books and from other teachers and workshops. It's great. But this gives them a community of people that are engaging in meaningful conversation. But somebody has to bring them into the gallery.
mhm,
Yeah.
yeah. Well,
So the movies, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
go ahead, please.
I was just going to say that there's a film called Departures. It's a Japanese film called Akira Buto. And it also met a lot of my criteria in that it is a Japanese film, and it is about a man who loses his job. He's a musician. And there are four themes all over this film. And it's wonderful also to have a film that's not about American culture and not about what a social four, or a self-preservation four looks like in America, but might look like in Japan. And I'm not Japanese,
Mm,
so that isn't my full focus on the film. But the themes of marriage, losing a job, grief, losing a father, potentially losing a marriage, um, how to find your authentic self, all of these themes are in this film. It becomes moot to talk about whether the character is a four or not, although plenty of great cases can be made. But to be in a community of nine other people talking about what have you done with grief? What has it been like for you to lose? What's it just been like for you to lose and experience grief? And what have you done that's authentic?
mhm.
It's just wonderful to have a community like that in your life for the short time I might be teaching a 5-week class, or the majority of the people work with me for 9 months and we meet monthly. Yeah, it's wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah, and it's through connection initially when we're children that we develop personality adaptations. And then it's through connection as adults that we can bring some flexibility, insight, understanding, healing to those things too. So I
Yes.
love that you have a community that you're working with this.
Hmm. Yeah, Bill Schaefer was one of my teachers. Bill he was a infant and child psychologist who wrote a book on Taoism and the Enneagram. I was in his Mexico study group once a year, a few years before he died. And Bill had stopped doing what he called one-off programs because he really came to see that people grow and change best in ongoing learning community. It doesn't have to be intense necessarily. It doesn't have to be a huge commitment, but there is something to working with people who say, I'm here to learn about everyone, not just myself.
Mhm.
Um, and I do see the lasting change that people have by having relationships with each other over time. Yeah, it's humbling and deepening, which is what
Yeah.
I care about. Yeah.
Yes.
And
And
men also are attracted to this, Michelle. That was one of the reasons you and I connected is during COVID, my colleague Matt Ahrens, I don't know if you've met him, he's a narrative tradition graduate that I've been friends with for years and a
yeah,
therapist.
we do know each other too.
Oh yeah, good. So Matt and I put our heads together and said, what can we do for men? In particular during lockdown. And they came out. We did 2 workshops with 2 other narrative grads, and men come out to be together in their own circles. I'm a man who has spent a lot of time. I have a minor in women's studies for my undergraduate degree. I've been interested in gender studies, communications, lots of ways of understanding each other. So I've been in a lot of self-help and spiritual workshops, that are predominantly women, from Unitarian conferences to yoga to, Sandra Matry workshops, the whole shebang. But it is predominantly women. And I believe that men are in trouble in our culture. Men and boys are in a lot of trouble. And they need support from systems that will welcome them and understand them. So I have focused some of my work. I'm still doing co-gender communities, my literature and film, but I've had success in bringing men together, in particular to talk about literature and film and seeing themselves on a screen
Mhm.
and coming together to talk about what does that mean for me as a modern man. And I honestly find out they really want friends.
So,
For one
Dale,
thing.
when you say that you feel men are in trouble or however you worded it,
Mhm.
what are you noticing
Mhm.
and how are you viewing the work that you do as being helpful to them?
Yeah. Well, what I'm noticing is that I don't know if that there's the Nation that came out this month, and the title is "Are Men Okay?" It's an article about Richard Reeves's work, and the answer is really that men and boys are not okay, and that they need some special attention. Um, I think that what my work has offered folks is truly the ability to be self-aware, permission to be curious, permission to ask questions about being a man today. What is modern masculinity? There's a lot of places that they can go, or they can be alone. And I think I want some of the places they can go to be supportive, and to be wise, and to give good guidance. I think the Enneagram is a system that works for a lot of men because it makes sense, it's understandable, and putting it in the language of I watch a movie and I get together with a bunch of guys to talk about it is a permissible way of doing Enneagram content. And I have to tell you, Michelle, the goal is that people become friends. Men are not conditioned to trust other men. I'm not
Mm-mm.
sure they're conditioned to trust women that much more, but there are a lot of men that give their entire lives to their work and their spouse. And if one of those falls apart, they fall apart. So I really believe in the power of people having friends. Some of the men in film groups that I've done continue to meet without me, which I absolutely love because they're meeting whether they choose to continue meeting monthly or they meet quarterly. They're people that have bonded with each other that can get together and talk about what's meaningful to them, what scares them, not just fives, sixes, and sevens, what makes them sad, not just twos, threes, and fours, and what makes them feel out of control. Eights, nines, and ones aren't the only ones who do that. But that content that the Enneagram points to, how do you deal with fear? How do you deal with sadness? How do you deal with feeling out of control, right? Um, it helps men to be in men's only circles. It just helps them to be in men's only circles. Um, it doesn't mean that women aren't good teachers of the Enneagram for men by any means, but men really do get an extra benefit when they do some of that work with their brothers.
I can see that completely because what you said earlier of how men can sometimes delve into work or delve into making their spouse happy,
Mm.
and all the while suppressing their own emotions,
Yes,
which works for a part of them because oftentimes men are given the message that they're not supposed to feel, that that's a soft thing. And
right.
people do, parents do give messages, you're a mama's boy, or you shouldn't cry, or
Mhm.
to little boys, so they grow
Yeah,
up that way. So I love how you were saying
yes,
what's sadness and fear. You're bringing up these emotions to give them permission to reown
yes.
those parts of themselves again.
Yeah, and for men to ask each other in our society today, trying to be good men, that's a big focus I have. The subtext of my work is I call it being your own best man. I've been, somebody's best man at his wedding, and I think, how do you be your own best man? And
Mhm.
some of that is not only giving permission for emotions, but also the experience of fear. When do men get to actually share that they're afraid? Right? That's my big Achilles heel. I'm very fine being angry. And because I'm a four, I'm more than glad to tell you about my sadness. But really, my Achilles heel is fear. The Enneagram doesn't point me to that.
Mhm.
But maybe it does because I'm not a thinking type, right? And maybe because I'm a one-to-one four, anger makes sense in the theory. But I have found benefit in being with men to talk about what it's like to have the full range of emotions, thoughts, and senses. And how can that be something that supports my being a good family member, a good spouse, a good citizen? Um, and those answers can't be given to me just by women, or they can't be given to me by a book. It's really effective. I always say there's a reason that Jesus had 12 buddies. or more, and he spoke in parables. He spoke in story, right? I'm not a Christian. I don't mean to use that as an example for any other reason, to say that he's one of the many spiritual teachers like the Buddha who said, people remember stories and parables. And that might be an effective teaching tool. I think that's what literature and film does. And there's also a focus on the Buddha having the Sangha and people creating community, because
Mhm.
people are affected by the story, the parable, and the community. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I've just really come to trust those things. Yeah. So upcoming, I'm doing an introduction to the Enneagram the day before Father's Day, just to make sure that men know that there's something that they can come to that won't be 98% women and their head on the screen. And then I'm doing in Portland, I'm doing an in-person literature and film course for men once a month through the academic year. And then I'm doing an online one once a month through the academic year. And it's everything from I pulled up there's a great movie if you've seen I Love You Man with Paul Rudd. It's a
Been a while, yeah.
it's a good one. Well, he was voted on the Papal Magazine Sexiest Man, I think, last year, so it's worth a look. He's very sweet. But he did a movie with Jason Segel and I think it's Rashida Jones, and he has a lot of two themes around him. He is a real estate broker, and he's about to marry his fiancée, and she says, "You don't have any male friends. You don't even have a best man. You got to go learn how to be friends with men." And that is a universal theme for a lot of men. I don't know how to be friends with men, right? And it also teaches us a little bit about the identity types of I need you to like me. A lot
Mhm.
of flattery and seduction that this character uses in sweet ways, but he's a real estate broker. So he's got the charm, but he doesn't actually know how to have a relationship and a friendship. And he comes around to doing it. It's a really sweet film. And I've had a number of twos say, "Oh my God, that's me. That's me. That's me." And they get to say that in a community of other men. They can
Mm.
ask them, "Tell us more." Yeah,
I love that, and, these men can hold up mirrors for each other and help them, re-own some of the things they've rejected or just haven't been in touch with their whole
right
lives.
on. Right on. Yes, yes. Yeah, so yeah, it's really rich work. One of
Yeah.
the other films I like telling people about is a bit rough, but I used for the co-gender community last year, and I'm using it in the men's curriculum. The film The Banshees of Inisherin. Did you see it?
No.
You have just heard about it. Yeah,
Yeah, I heard about it.
it's a really good film about male friendship that goes through conflict. The difficulty of telling a friend that you want things to be different, and also an over-identification with being the nice guy. There are a lot of 9 themes in this movie. Without giving anything away, there's a scene of uh, Colin uh, Colin Farrell screaming, "I'm the nice guy. I'm the nice guy. Everybody thinks I'm nice." That is a strategy that a lot of certain types, the positive outlook types in particular, have. This movie matches a lot of 9 themes about dampening anger, dampening conflict, dampening desire, and then a large blow up occurs, right? As big as Godzilla, a large blow up can occur. Uh, the film is masterful. It is difficult, but it is masterful.
Mm.
And everyone has difficulty with conflict and how to manage it. So again, to get a group of people together to look at a film, to talk about what does that mean? How might conflict be a wrestling point for nines? But then to broaden the discussion, how is this about all of us? And
It
then,
seems
yeah,
we could learn from every film, even if we watch something and we're bored and we didn't get much of it, like you said earlier, even that's something to learn from. So practically
mhm.
anything we watch can
Yes.
be a learning opportunity. And I like what you said. I was looking into your work, I think a bit ago, but The words you used were unearth gold, I think you said, unearth some
Yes. Yeah, exactly. That sometimes the shadow is actually like unearthed gold. It's hidden gold
yes.
we haven't pulled out yet. We're oftentimes so afraid of what's down there, but it might just be something that's unowned. Yes, yes.
Yeah. Now, when you
Well,
do this work, do you also, I think I remember that you also bring in points of disintegration, you bring in vices and virtues, you do,
mhm.
right?
Yeah, I'm not against teaching the theory at all when it is, when it's worthwhile. And I'll oftentimes in my handouts with folks talk about what they may want to watch is a certain character that is developing. And those developments may be directly related to the arrows, which I think are, I don't think the traditional model of a one way is a good way and the other one's a bad way. I think we have access to the arrows as resources, adaptive and maladaptive, as Jerry Wagner likes to point out.
Mhm.
I also spend a lot of time, this is unpopular with a lot of Enneagram teachers, but I still really believe that the wings are applicable discussions that we are likely, what I think Michael Goldberg's theory was that the type is a resolution of the tension between the wings.
Mm,
I
mhm,
talk about that a lot.
mhm,
As a four, I really see that my three and five are in dialogue a lot. When I was young, it made me feel cyclothymic or bipolar. And what I know is that my three side wants to go out, teach, sell, connect, make product, help people, inspire, change the world. And the five says, don't you just want to stay home and watch movies and read books with your five partner, right?
mhm,
And then if I do that too long, my three starts to say, I want some attention. So looking at your character through the lens of not only those connecting types, the arrows, but also the wings that are having a dialogue with you that can support you developing a more functional character, but also at times will disintegrate and cause you to be less functional. Um, I'm doing a shadow course coming up. It's monthly, and we're looking at the talented Mr. Ripley for the identity types. We're looking at the John Patrick Shanley's play Doubt. Take a guess for types 6, 5, and 7. And then we're looking at the Banshees of Inisherin, I believe, for type 9, the repression of conflict and the repression of will, or the overexertion of will. Those three films, and we'll look at the shadow of the types, and it's just really fun. I wanted to say
mhm.
one thing, Michelle, just before I miss it. I apologize. Um, when you asked if we would meet to talk about this, and your focus is helping providers,
Yes.
I can't underscore enough that giving an individual, or in particular with your work, a couple, not an Enneagram book, but a couple of movies to watch on date night, or to go home and say, I know you're not that interested in the Enneagram, and that's totally fine, but you might want to go watch Two of Five, this movie with Joaquin Phoenix called Her, about a man who falls in love with an operating system, right?
Mhm,
And he's grieving his marriage that has fallen apart, and he is isolating, and he's going into his head and leaving the world physically and going into his mind.
mhm,
But he could also watch a movie called The Station Agent with Peter Dinklage about somebody who is also grieving. Or he could watch the movie Moonlight, Academy Award, African American film called Moonlight, about a young gay African American urban kid who tries to find competency and is overstimulated and decides to withdraw, become more competent in certain ways. Um, Giving people that, something artistic, something parable and story, something that two people can discuss about that gets them to begin looking at themselves more safely. So
mhm,
I guess the one thing I wanted to say before we finished was just for providers to consider literature and film as treatment.
mhm. as a really, really powerful intervention, which, like I
Yes,
said, I think I'm not alone when that I'm seeing films through a different lens from talking with you and how you use them. So you
good.
just gave great examples for specific Enneagram patterns. Is
Mhm.
there a list that you have that's available that providers could?
Yes, yeah, on my website, under I believe it's called JEDI, which is Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, also known as DEI in some circles. I have a list of films that I've used for the last 10 years that highlight non-dominant culture examples of type themes. I always say I'm not teaching type, I'm teaching type themes. It
Mhm.
keeps the conversation more general.
Yep.
So on that page on my website, which is just dalerhodes.com, if you go to that section, you can see what I'm offering men next year. You can see what I'm offering the co-gender community next year. There's 9 films or books for men, 9 books and films for men and women. And then the Jedi page has films like Her, and has films that might point to A Raisin in the Sun by Lorraine Hansberry. A lot of 7 themes on restriction, limitation, being limited, from an African American author and from an African American production. There's a film that I really like that is done by Chloe Zhao, and it's called The Rider. And it's filmed on a Lakota reservation with Lakota actors playing a story. And there are 8 themes all over this film that is about an injured rodeo rider, a tribal member who is protective of his sister and protective of his injuries, his tribe, and his family. So you'll find things like that on my website, and then the current list. If folks want something specific, they can certainly email me and say, what do you have for 5s? What do you have for 7s? But you'll see what I'm using currently on the website. Yeah.
Wonderful. And so thank you for that great resource for the clinicians listening to this. And I just want to highlight that, yeah, sometimes when we're sitting with clients, we try getting in one way because the Enneagram is such a powerful tool.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
maybe there's people that aren't as interesting, but no thanks. Then maybe there's another channel here.
You
Another,
get me. I love hearing that, Michelle. Exactly. That as providers, we're looking for what works, and we're not looking for what works for us. Like we're in peer support, consultation, trainings, Enneagram conferences, and all of that kind of stuff, and that feeds us. But for a lot of our clients, they're fed by something different. I think people are fed by friendship, stories, art, literature, things that are accessible to them and in a blank way, I don't mean to sound so bold, but there's more you can do for the men in your life than leave an Enneagram book on the floor of the toilet. Like
Mhm,
that's probably not how he's going to get it either.
mhm,
But something that says, "Hey, check this out. You can learn this through a movie. You can learn this through a book. Or do you think that this is you? Or do you think this is me?" And
mhm.
a dialogue begins and curiosity begins. Yeah. Yeah. So I appreciate that you get that you're trying to expand the way that all the providers that use this system can employ it in many ways and not just giving people theory. Yeah.
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 Yeah, no, I think it's wonderful. And
Mhm.
or you mentioned earlier diversity, equity, etc. I get the sense that your work supports all of that and
Yeah. Yeah. Very
inclusion.
Very much, yeah. I have a fairly good focus that every year about at least a third of the literature and film that I'm choosing is either portraying or is portrayed by or written by or produced by, directed by people of color, gay and lesbian folks. I'm a gay man myself. So it was an honor, for example, to share with the community the film Milk about Harvey Milk. That's the
Yes.
United States' first openly gay elected official. And there's a book about him called The Mayor of Castro Street. And there's a film that Sean Penn did masterfully. And presenting a hero from the gay and lesbian political movement, um, that it was so obviously portraying someone that was about potential, kindness, excitement, love, options. There were a lot of seven themes that can be seen in this character that's a real life person. I don't have to go to the college to defend whether he was a seven or not. What I can easily defend is that this is someone who cares a lot about what sevens care a lot about: potential, being free from restriction, ending restriction and limitation, being friendly, making friends, gaining political power through fun and friendship. That's an amazing style. So you'll find on my website that I do care a lot about making sure that we are looking at other cultures, and including everything from men to other regional cultures, socioeconomic cultures, women, people of color, the whole shebang. Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah,
Thank you for
that's
noticing
so
that.
important. That's
Mhm.
so important. I
Yeah.
get when you and I are talking, I pay attention to if a vision comes up in my head,
Yeah.
and I'm seeing the ocean. And I think it's because the just like the ocean, there's a whole world going on in the ocean that we're not aware of, but when we go in there, it's like, wow, I didn't even know this exists. And I feel
Yeah.
like there's a correlation between that and the world that exists when you watch film,
Mhm.
of all the different dialogue it can bring up, all the different areas of
Yes.
understanding that exists there. It's like potential to waiting to be tapped into.
Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah, and getting together with eight other people, first a community of around 40 people, but then eight other people saying, I put my mask on and I went underground and this is what I was experiencing. There was anemone and there was coral, right? It's almost as if everyone has had the same dream this month, right? And they dreamed up, like the movie The Holdovers that took over the Academy Awards, I think the year before last, with Paul Giamatti. It was as if everyone had had the same dream about a grousey teacher that went through character development to be a little kinder, a little softer, a little warmer. But you saw this person's integrity, an archetypal story that could have shown up in a story like A Man Called Ove, or I'm trying to think of what else, because I was doing it around type 1 issues. But A Man Called Ove, or even Wit, a play with Emma Thompson, that this sort of curmudgeonly, idealistic, frustrated person had a good soul that was just a little frustrated and it got unraveled. Everybody in my community had the same dream. As you said, they all went to the depths of the ocean, but they come out and say, here's what I saw. Did you see that?
Mhm.
I love it. I absolutely love it. It's just so great. And they're not just doing it with me, they're doing it with each other. And that's the point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what a great approach to working with the Enneagram and the
Thank you.
healing power of it. What a wonderful perspective. So
Thank
thank
you.
you so much for everything that you've
Oh,
shared.
thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And
Yeah.
again, one more time for folks who want to visit your website, could you spell your last name for people?
I will. It's DaleRhodes.com. It's Dale. It's my first name, and the last name is Rhodes. It's Rhodes.
Yes.
DaleRhodes.com. Yeah. And I'm happy to hear from anybody that says, hey, I'm not finding enough on type 5. What else would you recommend? I'm more than happy to touch base with people. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you,
Well,
Michelle. I really appreciate your support.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you for being here and contributing to this summit. I think a lot of people can learn from your approach and implement it into their practice. So
Thank you.
help more people.
Thank you. Yeah, and as a 4, I love that you understand what I'm doing.
Yeah, I really think I get it. I'm inspired.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. Terrific.
Okay. Well, I'll say goodbye for now, Dale. Have a
Thank
good
you so much. Have a great day, Michelle.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye.